Alright, YouTube, the corporate media would like to remind you that Sadiq Khan never did anything wrong, that Trump is a bigot, and that, the Parliament attack over in the UK was just violence, had nothing to do with religious zeal. Here's the problem. People on the left don't know how to deal with Islamic attacks, which is what this is. They don't know how to deal with it because they see it as an immigration issue. They see it as a foreign ideology entering Europe for the first time, since the Islamic invasions of Spain and parts of Southeast Europe and so forth, a la the Ottomans or the Moors and some of these other groups, these various attacks. They see it primarily as an issue of foreigners, and so they can't criticize this one particular religion. The problem is that it's really a problem of religious zeal. Let me posit a situation for you before I start in on Sadiq Khan and how I'm actually sad that I was right about his character. If you had millions of zealous Christians, very religious, very literalistic, from parts of the extremely religious Christian world, moving into Europe, do you not think there would be violence and problems associated with it? Of course there would. And the people there wouldn't know how to deal with it. Because the Christians of Europe and many of the Christians of the US, Canada, Australia, they're not religious. They may be a Christian, they believe in the Christian God, but they're not religious Christians. Oh yeah, I go to church on Christmas, I go to church on Easter. Or maybe they go to church weekly and they pray a little bit, but they don't really make it an integral part of their life. Their religiosity is not all-encompassing. But in most parts of the world, religion is all-encompassing. And it's not just the Islamic world. And this is why the left is wrong on this issue. They boil it down to anyone criticizing the influx of foreigners into our states. They're just an Islamophobe. It's not an Islamophobe. It's a statement that organized religion as practiced by people in many parts of the world is not fully compatible with the developed world. The developed world is secular. The developed world believes in human rights over the religious liberty to denigrate them. That's not the case in many parts of the Middle East. It's not the case in many parts of Africa, whether it's Islamic or Christian Africa. It's not the case in parts of Christian Latin America. It's not the case in parts of Asia where you have tribal religions, animism, and things like that. Or you have various forms that you'd think of like the Buddhist monks there in I believe like Burma, dealing with the Islamic minority there. Things like that. You have a lot of violence associated with religious practices because they take the religion very seriously. They take it literally. If they read, "Thou shalt kill the witch" in the Bible, or "stone the adulteress" in the Quran or something like that, they take it literally because they think their soul is on the line if they ignore that dictate, if they ignore that general philosophical command. People in Europe and the United States moved past that 100 years ago. They no longer act that way. And Sadiq Khan is a moron. He's completely and utterly wrong. He knows that he's wrong, and he's misleading people. He comes out and says, oh, well, living in London, terrorist attacks are going to be part and parcel of living in a large city. No, they're not. That's an excuse that you're making for people that you find the issue difficult because you happen to have declared you are a Muslim. Now, you may not yourself be particularly religious, but you're still turning a blind eye to zealots entering your metropolitan area and causing violence. It would be no different than if the mayor of London was a moderate Christian after the usual European style. Oh, I don't care about gay marriage, blah, blah, blah. I'm a Christian, but I just sort of believe in the God. And you were watching hundreds of thousands of extremely religious Christians come into London and cause trouble. It would be no different. There are people in this world, billions of them, who take their religion so seriously they put it before all else. They would kill their whole family if they thought their God was commanding it. They will rise up against their state if they think their God is commanding it. They'll kill themselves if they think their God is commanding it. They chop off each other's hands for stealing because some God in some religious path commands it to be so. These people actually exist. It doesn't matter whether they're Muslims or whether they're Christians or Hindus or whatever they happen to be, Orthodox Jews. There are people in this world that take their religions extremely literally. And this is something the left doesn't quite grasp. The left over the last 10 years has gone from saying religion is bad, organized religion is evil, and belief in God is an opiate. It's like being a sheep, man, like totally like bitchin'. They've gone from that to saying, oh, but this one specific religion that's entering the West, which is Islam, is exempted from our criticism because we conflate it as an immigration issue. Would you make the same mistake if they were taking in millions of refugees from Christian Africa, who were doing the same things because they are literalist in their religious beliefs? Would you do the same thing if it were millions of religious practicing Hindus? I'm not talking about, oh, they came from Bangalore, they came from Hyderabad, from some urban area in India. No, I'm talking about if a bunch of villagers who are extremely literal in their practice, don't get along with Muslims especially, don't really get along with many Christians, were to come into Europe and there were violence as a result, would you have the same problem in describing what was going on? Sadiq Khan is an opportunist. He fooled the left there into thinking that he's a total secularist. And he's also managed to fool the right, in a sense, because the right now in Europe is attacking Islam. They're not attacking religious extremism in general. The one thing he's saying, in essence, in spirit, that's actually right is this isn't just Islamic terror, it's religious terror, or it's just terror in general. That's true. Yeah, so religion causes violence. Then why do you always shield this one particular group of religious people that have beliefs that are so literalistic, so out there, so fundamentalist in the sense of Islam, they don't really fit in with European culture? The fact that it happens to be Islam, you know, the non-native ideology of Western Europe, why does that cause you to exempt them? What if these were a bunch, again, millions of Hindus entering Europe and causing violence because they were literalist in their beliefs? What if it were Christians from some deep part of the third world that had literalist beliefs, that believed that you should stone witches and believe they existed, that you should burn people alive for practicing what they see as witchcraft because the Bible commands it to be so? What if it were one of those groups? Would you still have the same problem in describing it? The right doesn't do itself any favors here. They fixate solely on Islam. The fact, the left applauded Sadiq Khan for being the first Muslim mayor of London, without even realizing how ironic it was that for decades and decades they've talked about, oh, public figures, they shouldn't be Christian. They shouldn't have Christian, they shouldn't believe in a God. That's a bunch of nonsense. They should be totally secular, if not outright state atheism or something like that. For decades they said that, and then all of a sudden someone who is Islamic gets elected as the mayor of London. Oh, that's great. You know, clap, clap, clap. Oh, great step forward for progressivism. The same dude who's trying to ban, by the way, lingerie and swimsuit billboards on the bus system in London uses the excuse, oh, it's about fat shaming. We don't want women to have poor self-images. Bullcrap. That's not the reason that he's imposing it. I'll give you 3 guesses as to what the real reason is. It's because of his constituents, who are increasingly religious zealots. It's for political purposes. He's a politician. No, politicians would never lie to you, certainly not if they were an Islamic politician. Well, what's the difference between that and a Christian politician who's non-practicing, using their religion as a wedge issue, trying to play it up to their crowd? He comes out and he says, oh, this is part and part. We should expect attacks like this because we're in a city and it's part and parcel of living in a large city these days. And why is it part and parcel of living in a city these days? It's because you have no problem with millions of religious extremists entering your country. It doesn't matter what kind of extremists they are. You know, there are a few exceptions. What does a Buddhist extremist tend to do? Oh, extreme meditation session. Maybe they died because they fasted too long. As far as the Abrahamic religions go, they're all violent, if they're taken literally. Europeans and Americans don't tend to take their religions literally. They take at least the bad or the culturally unacceptable parts as metaphor. They're not religious. They're not literalists. They don't interpret their religion that way. That's the problem. It's about religious order. It's about religious dogma. It's about the interpretation of any religion as literal. You interpret the average religion literally. And in all of its historical parts, it's talking about all these wars and all these moral laws you have to enforce, usually by death or by torture or something. Yeah, if you take it literally, that could cause some violence. Because the person believes that their soul is a hazard if they don't do these things. You can't really blame them. They were raised up in this culture. Because they weren't raised in the developed world, they were told from the cradle, and will be told until the grave, that they have to do things a certain way or they suffer eternally. That is an incompatible ideology with the developed world, regardless of what religious tenets are actually being expressed. It doesn't matter whether it's Islam or not. And the right wing should stop fixating on just Islam and start criticizing. The left, obviously now, loves religion. I hear all the time from the left here, Jesus was a refugee. Jesus loved foreigners. Jesus was anti-war. And all these things, they're like taking Jesus Christ and using him as the standard bearer. It's like they're replacing FDR with Jesus Christ. It's surreal. 10 years ago, they were saying, oh, Christianity's evil. All these churches are evil. Man, it'd be great if they all burned to the ground, practically. They're starting to get a little bit violent about, about Christianity. Now, all of a sudden, it's Jesus was a refugee. No, we love organized religion because the Pope is a social Marxist or something. Maybe the right wing should start criticizing religion instead of just fixating on Islam. Because these other religions, they caused problems too, didn't they? You look throughout history, yeah, this particular group of people happens to be majority Islamic that's coming into Europe. The religious zealots that are settling there, they're primordially Islamic. But again, what if it were third world Christians or Hindus or something? Would the result be any different? Or would they be doing the same thing because they're literalists? They're zealots by Western standards. It'd be the same damn thing. And Sadiq Khan knows damn well what he's doing. He knows that he's playing these people like fools. He's tricked the right wing into just attacking Islam so he can label them bigots. And he's throwing bones to those same Islamic zealots in the form of his moral policing with the buses and so forth. He comes out and says this. He's trying to play up to the left in general, including the non-Islamic left of London. Well, we just have to deal with it. This is the way that life works now. It's totally normal to expect that on any random day here in Rutland, in London, yeah, two almost became similar under Loris, trust me. It's totally normal to expect that a bomb is going to go off at any random moment. It's totally normal. Now, these Europeans, especially in the UK, I noticed, and in Germany now, oh, these uncultured Americans, with all of their guns and their Wild West ideology, no wonder that they have so much crime. We don't do things like that here. We have a peaceful society. People are disarmed and expected not to attack one another, settle their differences outside of the legal system. That's all well and good, but now you're rolling over and playing dead because Sadiq Khan happens to be religious and not a Christian and says basically the same thing, which is, yeah, sometimes violence is going to happen. But why is that violence happening? It's happening because of religious zealots the world over. And I'm sure there will be events like this that don't involve Islamists. Sometimes they happen. Oftentimes they're motivated by some other religion. Wow, it's almost like religion tends to cause violence when it's taken too literally. Wow, I think the left used to say this for quite some period of time and abandoned that when it became inconvenient because most of the religious zealots were not part of Western culture. Wow, it's amazing how that works. It's almost a form of propaganda. Yeah, so Sadiq Khan should feel disgraceful trying to attack like Donald Trump Jr. for pointing out that his comments were pretty nonsensical. But they are. It doesn't make any sense what he's saying. It makes even less sense that people would tolerate that from the mayor of London. It makes no sense that people tolerate religious zealots. In the UK, they allow Sharia law. In the most literal sense, codified for anything that wouldn't be considered a crime under a British law, under the laws of the UK, they can still be put on trial by a Sharia court given actual punishments. It just doesn't extend to the official legal realm or something like that. But they allow them to literally operate their own religious courts. What would happen in the UK if a bunch of Christians wanted to set up Christian-style courts? Or would they let them do that? That's crazy talk. It doesn't make any sense. You're destroying your culture. Not because of, oh, Islam, Muslims, Middle Easterners. No, because of zealots. That's what the problem is. You're gonna plunge yourself back into the religious zealotry you suffered under centuries and centuries ago through these actions, destroying the lives of your children in the process, including, by the way, people who came from the Islamic world kind of believe in Allah but wanted to get away from the zealots. I said this with regards to refugees a year ago. A lot of the refugees, they want to get away from religious zealots. They're part of some community that's not filled with zealots. Now you're inviting zealots in and you're actually making excuses when they attack people. How do you think the actual refugees feel? when you do this. They fled ISIS, they fled Al-Qaeda, they fled some group of total jihadists. Be the same as some Christian refugee group. They're like, oh, they're killing everyone in our tribe as witches. We have to get help. They come to Europe. And then you'd invite in the same people that were killing them before. It's nonsense. It's crazy. You're going to lead to a violent purge of even parts of the Islamic minority within parts of Europe because of your policies. And you're too dumb to even see it. So that's really the problem. Sadiq Khan's nuts. That's about all. Peace out.